of the USB Center in Kiribati. When Thabo and I were classmates, and we were students in all of Ron's class at USB. And when Thabo introduced me, and we were both very poor students at the time, and introduced me to toddy drinking, which was the only beer we could afford to buy at that time. There's a coconut tree outside Toddy's, outside Win Tapo's room, so every Friday we'll be picking it up for our weekend sessions. I introduce you to Dr. Win Tapo Mackenzie.
I think I'll start with a footnote. And the footnote is that I chose to speak on the topic traditional leadership and local governance in Kiribati because it was the very first subject that I worked on with Ron after I finished my first degree at USP in 1978. I was then in the Ministry of Finance in Kiribati when I got asked to be transferred to the Ministry of Local Government because Ron was organizing a conference in Kiribati on more effective local governments for the 1980s. Asked that I be part of the Kiribati team to prepare for the conference. So after the conference, I left a very promising career in the public service. The prospect of becoming the first Kiribati Permanent Secretary for Finance to join Ron at IPS as a junior fellow. And that was in 1981. So in introducing my topic, I go back to that conference, the more effective local government for the 1980s, which was held at USP in Center in Kiribati. A conference that was convened by Ron. He played a leading role in it, and to which almost all of the ministers responsible for local government in the region were invited. Now, in opening that conference, the president of Kiribati at the time, President Yeremia Tabai, observed that when we in Kiribati talk about local government, the most pertinent question is, where does the real power lie? And in making this observation, the president was referring to the relationship between the Unimane, which are the elders and the traditional leaders in Kiribati, and the Island Council, a legally constituted body under the Local Government Ordinance of 1966. And this relationship is always characterized by long-standing tension and occasional conflicts. A conflict in which the Unimane invariably had the upper hand most of the time. Now, when we talk about the elders, we talk about, because the lifespan in Kiribati rarely extends beyond 80. We talk about men in their 60s right up to their 70s, and those are the decision makers in Kiribati. Under the Local Government Act, the elders are not recognized as a body, a decision-making body. But they continue to wield a lot of power and influence within and from outside the formal council. And there have been instances, as Peter Lama referred to in his paper on local government in Kiribati in 1980, where the legally constituted councils were dismissed by these elders. And then government was left with the task of finding a legal justification for their dismissal. There have been cases where the Unimane withdrew their support, and the councils become inactive and dysfunctional. Now, and in this paper, I want to look at the causes of that turbulent relationship between the Unimane Assembly and the Island Councils, and the challenge faced by the state in harmonizing that relationship. And I begin by looking at the traditional leadership. in a predominantly egalitarian society like Kiribati, the leadership is the prerogative of the Unimane, those most senior male who represents a cluster of extended families. The extended families who share the same seating position in the Maniaba. The seating position is the boss. And this, the constituents, extended families in sharing the same bush also share the same mythical ancestor. So they believe that they all descended from some mythical ancestor. So sometimes you can't trace that relationship right up to that point. In the bush, the elder has two roles. One is the leader of his own social group, and the other role is that he represents his group outside the bush, in the village, the bigger village of District Maniaba, and in the island Maniaba as well. The Bosi representatives of the elders that sit as representatives of their groups are invested with authority to make a decision for the welfare and good order of the community, as well as adjudicate on matters pertaining to traditional law, both civil and criminal. And as Lanskart observes, any unanimous decision that they reach did in fact become equivalent to the Western notion of a statute. From the above description, it is very obvious that the gerontocratic assembly of Unimane had wide-ranging powers which normally did not comply with the conventional doctrine of separation of powers. In other words, they make laws and they execute those laws, and they also adjudicate and rule on most serious offenses. Now, when the British declared protectorate over the Gilbert Islands in 1892, they came to codify, standardize, formalize, but at the same time they sort of weakened the traditional system of leadership. And those judicial, legislative, and executive functions were separated, and some of the powers and prerogatives of these elders were taken away from them. But while many of the legal powers of the Unimane have been placed in different hands, they continue in practice to influence the decision making in their community, and in many cases, they, even up to this day, they still have that influence. And in the 1960s, when councillors were required to be elected, the Unimane did not see the need for an election. All they need, they require us to sit down in their Maniaba and decide who are the best candidates from the community, and they told the British government that these are our nominees. Let's declare them elected and opposed. And at that early stage, they were worried that the election might divide the community. And that was the justification for that. They see it as something unnecessary and something that might have the effect of dividing the community. But I think that they moved on from that thinking now, and they've accepted democratic elections as required by them. And even with the national elections, there have been cases right up to the 1980s where in some islands, candidates are just declared elected unopposed, because the old man said, these are our representatives, no one else is better than them to represent us. And it still continues to this day. Well, and the most recent manifestation of this was in 2004, in the presidential election, when the people of Miami decided that Anote Tong should be the candidate for president and no one is allowed to vote for anyone else. There was a court case that followed that. And, but, that is how, things are done. And this, I'm just using this to illustrate, the kind of power and influence that these elders have. Now, the question that one might ask is, where do these leaders, these elders, derive their power from? I would argue that sources of their power, there are two sources for their power. One is from the people themselves, because these elders represented a collection of families that they are head of. And as representatives of their family, they are also symbols of the unity of those social groups. And they command the respect and the support of people that come under their leadership. They are also the most senior in their group, knowledgeable. In Kiribati, we tend to associate age with knowledge.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. That's great.
We have a beautiful way of expressing it. They have eaten the most coconuts. That is one source of their power. The second source is the Maniaba itself. The Maniaba is that institution in the middle of Kiribati Maniaba, where the elders sit and have discussions about peace and war and other innumerable concerns affecting the Commonwealth. The Maniaba was to Kiribati and much more traditional clubhouse of the age, the sanctuary for those in flight, a parliament, a courthouse, all sort of things. But within that building, all behavior under its roof had to be seemly, decorous, and in strict conformity with custom, lest the Maniaba is offended or matauninga, and the culprit, Maraia or accursed. So there's a sacred thing about the Maniaba, and that's something also that the elders derive their powers from, the sacred nature of the institution which they're part of. And as representatives of their different social groups within the Maniaba, the Ulimani also are the symbol of the unity of the community. They command respect and manner and should not be challenged. To challenge them tantamounts to offending the Maniaba and the community and would normally provoke a community backlash. There had been a number of instances when individuals tried to challenge the authority and decision of the Maniaba and the Ulimani, and they invariably ended up losing their properties by fire. And you know who did that. Or being banished from the village, or even being killed. In a conference that I referred to at the beginning of the paper, and Peter Lama will attest to this, that we witnessed the exercise of the Ulimani's power when we had a retreat on the island of Mayana, during the weekend, when we had a conference. And Ron was with us there. There was Bernard Narakobi and several other prominent politicians from around the region with us at the time. And what happened was the member of parliament for the island was angry that he was not involved in the planning for the visit of the conference participants. And he came to the Maniaba. Well, at first he asked me to translate for him because he wanted to speak to the Maniaba and to the Ulimani in English, and he wants to get me to translate it to papers that the elders. No, and you don't usually do that in the Maniaba. And then in the end he started to make his speech, but the Ulimani deemed his speech to be very offensive, disrespectful, not only to the Ulimani themselves, to the Maniaba as an institution, but also to the visiting dignitaries that were on the island at the time. So during the course of his speech, one old man just stood up, asked for the policeman, and ordered him to arrest the member of parliament and put him in custody for the whole night. Now, we were told that that Ulimani was very clever about doing that. He could have said, take him and beat him outside, and it will be done straight away. But we were also informed that because he has offended the Maniaba, there will be some kind of curse befalling him. Whether by coincidence or curse, that member of parliament didn't live long after that incident. He died a few weeks later in a motorcycle accident.